Good evening. I'm calling the March 24th, 2020 school board meeting to order. As you are all aware, social distancing has been initiated as a means to mitigate the spread of the COVID-19 virus. Thank you for your patience in this unprecedented time. The overarching goals for tonight's meeting are safety for the board, staff, and the public, continuity of district business, and public participation. Based on these goals, we're asking that anyone who wishes to watch and listen to the board meeting consider doing so remotely. For our first board meeting under social distancing parameters, all members of the public who come to the meeting will be able to watch and listen to the board meeting from the front courtyard only, which is outside of the building. If you wish to address the board under public comment, please come into the lobby as directed by a deputy or staff, keeping distance between you and the next person. You will be asked to provide the same information you would normally provide on the public comment card to the staff member seated at the table. Once you've registered, you will be asked to wait outside in the front courtyard until your name is called to enter the boardroom. When your name is called, you will be escorted into the boardroom where you may speak for up to 3 minutes. Please stand where directed and do not touch the podium or microphone. After you have spoken, you will be escorted back to the front courtyard. Only one member of the public at a time will be allowed in the boardroom. Although this process may be awkward and take a bit more time, we are trying to keep the process about the same as it typically is, but within the guidelines of social distancing. This process will conclude once the public comment item on the agenda is complete. The board appreciates your patience and understanding. While this process is not ideal, we are in uncertain times and want to keep safety in mind while we continue operations, including public participation in our board meetings. After tonight's board meeting, we will evaluate how this process worked and consider where we may need to make some improvements. Again, thank you for being patient in these challenging times. Pam, roll call, please.
Mrs. Belford?
Present.
Mrs. Campbell?
Present.
Mrs. Deskovich?
Present.
Ms. McDougall?
Present.
And Mr. Susan?
Present.
Please stand while we say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, it is appropriate for us to recognize the great work of our teams during this crisis. Board members, if we could save our normal acknowledgments for after we've gotten through all of this, I think that our team has certainly gone above and beyond in the past couple of weeks. And so if any of you would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge any particular individuals or the team as a whole, I would ask that you do that at this time. Any board member? Ms. Deskovich.
Maybe if we each take a team. There's so many.
Sure.
There's so many. I don't want to pick one over the other, but I'll start with one, and then maybe you guys can pick up from there. I'll start with Mr. Cheatham, wherever he was just in here, and I asked him how many hours of sleep he's getting, and he just kind of shook his head. So I don't know if that means no sleep or very little sleep. Our IT team has been scrambling, to say the least, to get technology in place to go from a fully functioning 70,000 plus student school district in-person hands-on to a school district that's going to be distant, doing virtual or distance learning. I can't imagine, just can't imagine everything that he and his team are doing. Mr. Cheatham, I'm giving you accolades right now. We want to thank him and his team for all the hours they're putting in, for all the time. And ask the public to be a little patient with them. I imagine there's going to be a lot of technology fails over the next few weeks, and that's not because they're not working really hard and not trying. So, thank you, Mr. Cheatham.
Thank you, Ms. Deskovich. Ms. McDougall.
I want to give a shout out to Kevin Thornton and his team at Food Services. What an amazing job, and how quick they put it together. And they are just expanding now to more schools. So we have a total of 27, and I'm hopeful that we may even have a moving truck or van to go around to kids who can't make it to the schools. So kudos, very much so, to the food service, everybody who works there, and to Kevin and his team. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McDougall. Ms. Campbell?
All right, well, I want to do government and community relations, but I did promise some of our food nutrition services that I was going to do something tonight, and I think it was almost a dare to put my hairnet on. I'm only going to wear it for a little bit, but just want to recognize our great staff at all of our schools who are putting lunches together. We fed 599 students at Central Middle School today. So it was pretty amazing. It was
Yay.
quite a workout. But kudos to them. But Government Community Relations has done such a fantastic job in the last week and a half communicating when we really don't have all the information, because we're waiting on the state, we're waiting on, we have had spring break and not everybody's been working. I particularly want to recognize Kat Allen, for her presence on social media, because that is a lot of places where people are asking questions. And while really it's not always the best place to ask questions, she has been so consistent to provide answers just minute by minute. And I think Ms. Hensley told me she was up, into the late hours sometimes, answering questions, which has just been a calming presence. And so I'm so thankful for her. And also to Sarah Allman and Deborah Foley for keeping our partners in education in the loop through this. They have been consistently reaching out to them, and it's such a great partnership both ways, us helping them and them helping us. And just want to I'm thankful for their leadership in that area.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Mr. Susan?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo those thoughts for Mr. Thornton and his food and services team. Today at Sherwood, they did over 800 meals in one school, in the elementary school. And he also delivered into the Turnquest Center, the Meadows, inside the Meadows Mobile Home Park, was over 145 kids standing there waiting for food. And I've never seen inside that kind of a area, the poverty that's happening right now with a lot of these families who can't work. And I think that we as a school district are the backbone for this community. And I've never been more proud of individuals, all the way from soup to nuts, all the way from the superintendent, all the way down to our parents. And a lot of our parents, our superintendent, our staff, and our teachers who are getting ready to do something that's never been done before. And whether we all sit back and do everything perfect, it's all going to come down to that piece where they are working with those kids one-on-one, making sure that they have their assignments and making sure that they're getting counted, and we're all in this together. And for a lot of the people that are being inconvenienced across the district, they need to understand that we're trying the best we can, and everybody's in this together, and to work with us, not against us. And I think that needs to be said. I also wanted to say that I'm really, really excited to also say that the Grissom Parkway is being sold tonight, and that's a big deal for a lot of us, because a lot of what we do as far as having our vacant land on the properties for sale brings us more revenue and stuff like that for us to do stuff. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Susan. Dr. Mullins, did you want to postpone your recognition, or did you want to?
Yeah, I'll wait until our continuity of services presentation.
Okay.
So thank you.
Super. And I guess this is the appropriate time to do so. Our partners at BFT have opted not to attend our meeting this evening. But Mr. Colucci did reach out to me and ask if I would be willing to share a message on his behalf. And I think this is probably the appropriate place for it. I did ask him to send me an email because I didn't want to misspeak on his behalf, so I am speaking exactly what Mr. Colucci has sent me, just so everyone is aware. He said, I wanted to thank the staff for the incredible work they've done to make sure a quality education will continue for our students. I know that they've been working day and night to put a plan in action while dealing with ever-changing circumstances. They've done an amazing job of communicating with us and responding to the concerns of our teachers. I also want to thank our teachers who've been patient, calm, and eager to provide the best possible instruction for our students during this unprecedented situation. I'm very pleased that we successfully negotiated a memorandum of agreement this afternoon. The parameters put in place in this agreement address many of our teachers' concerns surrounding COVID-19. This agreement will enable them to focus on providing the best possible education for students. We know that there will be some bumps in the road, but we are confident that together we'll effectively deal with these challenges and that our students will continue to receive an outstanding education. So thank you, Mr. Colucci, for recognizing all of the hard work of our team members. And I will actually echo Mr. Colucci's sentiments, which is not something that happens all the time. But I think that the superintendent, the district team, all of our school leaders, all of our staff in so many different areas of the district have been working so hard at making sure that our students will come back and get an education, even if not in our normal environment. So, Dr. Mullins, thank you for all that you have done as far as your leadership, and to all of our staff, we appreciate you immensely. That
Belford.
brings
Ms.
yes,
Belford.
yes, Ms.
Can you hear me?
Deskovich.
They said these microphones aren't as loud. I just want to make sure, because we each took a department, but we didn't specifically acknowledge, I don't want anyone to feel left out. These people are working so hard. We didn't
Yes.
acknowledge HR or leading and learning and talk about huge departments that have had a huge role in what's been going on lately. So just want to include Dr. Theddy, because hours today and leading up today to negotiating with the union, with everything else going on, trying to make sure our 9,000 employees have the information that they need in this time of crisis about their employment. She's led the charge with that. So
Yes.
a huge thank you to her. And then, leading and learning is underneath all of this, everything that's going on. But maybe that's what you're going to cover in a bit with I just needed to say thank you to them.
Yes, and student services as well, who's been, I understand, I haven't seen it yet, but I understand that Chris Moore did a Facebook Live today with some information for our families with students with special needs. So it really has been an all hands on deck. And, Mr. Gibbs rarely gets recognition as he's sitting at the end of the table, but he has been incredibly involved in all that has been going on as well, making sure that we are following the law along the way and doing what we need to do. Mr. Susan?
The Brevard Schools Foundation has begun to pack all of the stuff for our homeless children across the district. I was in Wickham Park coordinating with the park rangers today to try to make sure that all of our children that are inside there get their hygiene packs along with the food and everything else that we're getting ready to do. So Brevard Schools Foundation and their work with our homeless populations is got to get a shout out to, because it's the backbone right there.
Very good, thank you. Anyone else that I'm sure we missed people along the way, but Mr. Novelli in operations and all the work that they have been doing, and yeah, Sue in facilities. Sue actually made our meeting tonight possible. She will tell you that she worked with a great collaborative team, but she was kind of taking the lead on that, not to mention all of the facilities issues and handling all of that. So really and truly, every single department in this district has been working insanely to try to make this really challenging situation work for our students.
And not to, Ms. Lisinski, our new CFO.
Yes.
Boy, she sure came on board at a unsuspecting time, but just so fortunate to have her, and she has jumped in and been so supportive of our staff and is already helping make us better by analyzing and looking at what expense savings can we be putting into place right now. And so she's leading the charge with her staff on that. So it really has been a 100% full team effort. The district staff behind the people you just mentioned are a legion of warriors of not great number, but of great character and commitment and dedication to this organization, to this community. We can't do what we have done in a week's time. Mind you, with spring break in there, and people had taken leave and gave it up and said, this is too important, and came in and responded and have put things into place. The presentation you're going to see shortly shows all this work has occurred in less than a week and a half. Mm-hmm. And it's just a tremendous demonstration of what Brevard Public Schools is about. It's times like this, we're probably one of the most unique geographic districts in the state of Florida. 80 miles long, and we have been areas of a district or school system for decades. Area 1, 2, 3, 4, North, Central, South. But the reality is, it is at a time like this that we're able to bring to our community this kind of work because we come together as one Brevard. And I just couldn't be more proud to be part of this organization, to be leading this organization with the army of folks who just daily and selflessly commit themselves to serving our kids and our families and our community in this capacity. So I couldn't hold out any longer. I'll probably say a few more comments in a minute, but.
Ms. Belford, I'm sorry. Dr. Thuddy would like to pass the acknowledgement to her directly that I just did. She said that Carly Green is the one that did the negotiating today. And
Carol.
Carol Green was the one that did the negotiating today, and that we should acknowledge her instead, just in true leadership fashion, like
Yes.
Dr. Thuddy does. And that the small team of Mark Langdorf, Mike Alba, and Rick Morton have been carrying a lot of weight back there. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you to all of those, and thank you for passing that message along, Ms. Deskovich. That is going to bring us to the adoption of the agenda, and I would like to request that we consider one small change to the agenda this evening, and that is that we actually move our public comment prior to the presentation on, sorry, I can't, I got my computer covered up here. If we could move public comment up just after the adoption of the agenda so that our public can get back to an isolated situation, hopefully. If the board is open to that, then I will ask Dr. Mullins to read us the agenda, but then we will need a motion to approve the agenda with amending the location of the public comment section. Does that make sense to you guys? Okay, so Dr. Mullins, if you would give us the details on the agenda.
Madam Chair and members of the board, on tonight's agenda, we have administrative staff recommendations, a presentation, 20 consent items, 4 action items, and 2 information items. You also have the yellow supplemental agenda, which are changes made to the agenda since being released to the public. Item A7 on administrative staff recommendations, F10 on student expulsions, F11 on meeting minutes, G30 on entry of final order, and G31 on procurement solicitations received revisions. Item G33 on temporary delegation of procurement authority, and H34 on draft resolution regarding the extension of sales surtax additions. Item H34 also received subsequent revisions. An FMEA recognition item and a Military Child Month resolution have been deleted from this agenda.
What are the wishes of the board?
Move to approve.
Second.
With an amendment.
With the
Open for
amendment?
discussion?
Okay. Madam Chair, I recommend that we
Campbell?
amend the order of the agenda this evening to move public comment before the presentation.
Okay, is there a second to Ms. Campbell's motion?
I will second that.
Ms. McDougall has seconded. Is there any discussion on the amendment? All right, then Pam, I will need to call for a voice vote on the amendment, I'm guessing?
Yes, who seconded?
Ms.
I did.
Campbell seconded? I'm sorry, Ms.
McDougall.
McDougall seconded?
May I ask something? If the motion, the recommendation is adopt the March 24th, 20 school board meeting agenda and its revisions, do we have to have a second motion to? Okay.
The original was the revisions as laid out by Dr. Mullins. The amendment is so that she could permit the chair's request to move public comment up. So you need to submit an amendment there and the second to the amendment. So the motion now is as amended.
Do we need to vote on the amendment first?
There's only one thing to vote on. The agenda
Agenda.
as amended.
Okay.
So
Do you need a voice vote on that, Ms. Escobar?
I do not.
Okay. Then I will call the question. Please vote. You're so good, Ms. Escobar.
Wow.
Hopped right on that.
All right. My mouse is working perfect.
And the motion passes 5-0. Okay. Given that we have moved our public comment to this area of the agenda, as indicated in my opening statement, I will call those who signed up to speak one at a time. A deputy or staff member will escort you to the boardroom where you will have 3 minutes to make comments. After the conclusion of your statements, you will be escorted back to the front courtyard. Please be mindful of social distancing parameters at all times. Ms. Escobar, have you gotten names of speakers yet?
Yes. Bob Cusimano and Joanna Cusimano.
Okay. Bob Cusimano and Joanna Cusimano, if you would please, with your deputy escort, make your way to the boardroom for your public comment opportunity. Thank you, Ms. Church. Thank you, Major Lanza. Mr. and Mrs. Cusimano, I do want to, I'm assuming that you all heard the instructions out there as far as standing back, so I will turn the mic on so you will have the opportunity to speak. Given the nature of what you've come to speak to us about tonight, I just want to make sure that you are aware that this is a televised meeting. So if there's any private information that you don't want to share, I just want to make sure that you keep that top of mind because it is going out to the entire world, okay? And typically, our speakers have 3 minutes to speak. So I have a clock here in front of me that I will start when you are ready to speak. It'll show you when the time is almost up. At the end of 3 minutes, I will, if you're not done, interrupt you and ask you to wrap up so that we can take our next speaker. We have obvious public decorum requests when you're speaking. Make sure that you're respectful. Don't give private information. Name individual staff members, no profanity. We want to keep it family friendly, that sort of thing. So I'm sure we won't have any issue with that. All right, super. Then I'm going to go ahead and start your time and turn on your mic.
Okay.
There you go.
I'm going to talk about my son Glenn and the expulsion. I want to talk about, start with October. He broke up with his girlfriend. People were texting, asking what happened. He was upset and impulsively, I guess probably from his ADD, he said to leave him alone and stay away. He did not make a threat or say he was going to use a weapon. We never saw the Instagram trail, but the one I did see just said that, to stay away, and others added to it and also put it on Snapchat. The sheriff saw it and said they did not even consider it a threat. The school said it was, so he was suspended. During the MDR, we didn't agree it was not from his disability. But the dean stepped out, said she spoke to the board on the phone, and came back with a decision to put him in ALC. She also stated said if we fight it, he would be expelled. So we went with the ALC decision. In February, the latest issue, friends were talking about sneaking drugs and knives into ALC and how they would do it. He joined the conversation this was on a Friday, and in jest, like the others were doing, said he would sneak in a gun. Note, he did not make a threat. On Monday, he heard people talking about him. A person asked if she was on his list. He did not answer because he didn't want to get into trouble. That person went back to the group and said we were on his list, which was the start of the rumor mill. He was suspended based on hearsay. The October paperwork in the packet you have states vague threat because there was no threat made. And I don't understand why it says with intent. He doesn't have a weapon, and he never made the threat to begin with. And also, this was done on a school holiday, so I don't know how there was any interruption. The packet also states martial arts weapons on his wall. They were $5 from Goodwill. They're decorations. They're not sharp. And I said before, it's like hanging a baseball bat up on your room. It's just there for display. For both the October and February MDR, we did not agree that it was not from his disability. To repeat, he never made a threat. Others either added to his post or extrapolated from when he was so scared to answer a question because he didn't want to get in trouble. Please consider what actually was said versus what was added and misinterpreted. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Cusimano?
Good evening. Glenn has never been given due process for either the first incident in October or the second incident in February. For the first incident in October, somehow people mistakenly took what other students posted as something Glenn had posted himself. This created a misconception of what actually was posted. Glenn had stated his innocence from the very beginning. He even told, when we had the MDR, he never threatened anybody. For the second incident in February, statements about him are untrue. He is an ESE student with ADHD that just came out during the MDR, didn't even have the paperwork. He also has a processing disability. He has trouble getting what's in his mind out. So when they told him to write something down, he just, came what came to his mind. As a result, his statement does not reflect all that he believes happened. Glenn told me verbally, because he's good at telling you verbally what happened, his side of what happened. The accusations against my son, Glenn, leave out so much. They left out their part of what they were saying, because it was a conversation between everybody. How can my son, Glenn, be expelled when he has not been able to tell what actually happened in October and in February? Please remember that there are two sides to every story. And I'm a parent, and I believe my son. He's told me from the very beginning, and during the first MDR, I just stood there because she just wouldn't let us, she just told us verbally everything, and we just stood there. And my husband and I are not ones to start trouble. We just stood there. I said, my son did something, and we had to go forth. And then when the second one happened, I said, oh my gosh, this can't be happening. If I could tell you what my son's been through the school system, you would be shocked. And I just wish that you would consider not expelling my son, because he doesn't deserve it. He's been through a lot, and I hope that you can look into what really, my son would never threaten the school. He would never do that, and I hope you believe me, because my son would not do that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Ms. Belford, may I, really quick?
Are you just speaking to them?
I want to ask somebody from staff to meet them in the hallway and show them a document that I was referencing earlier.
Yes.
Is that a yes, I may?
Yes, you may address
Okay.
them.
I reviewed the packet earlier today, and if Ms. Moore or Dr. Sullivan, whoever is appropriate and has that document right now in your packet, because you referenced that due process didn't happen, one of the documents is signed by, I don't know if it's by you, sir, or by you, ma'am, because we have a process for this. We have a whole hearing where you can come before 3 board members and we can work through this of why you don't, work through the due process. That's where you petition to say you didn't get due process. And we've passed that because that document was signed. So one of them will meet you out there in the building, but they didn't want to be in here tonight. One of them will meet you in the hallway with that packet, and maybe you can review that with them, because I'm confused at
I can comment on that if you want.
We can tell you why we didn't.
why you signed the due process?
Yes.
If the chair would allow, I would like to hear why you signed the due process, why you checked the box that said you didn't want the hearing, you didn't want the due process, and now tonight you want the due process.
Yeah, the reason was, like I said in my first statement, was that was the one in October, and the person that was in the room, the dean, she had told us, well, if you try to fight it with the board, you'll probably get him expelled. He goes, you got to go to ALC or you'll get him expelled. He goes, I wouldn't, she goes, I suggest you just do that. I said, okay, figuring that I would be trusting her because I didn't know, we never did this before. I don't know about the board, I don't know who you guys are, and just very nerve-wracking, scary, all that kind of stuff. Like, ooh, do I got to go in front of this board? Then what are they going to do to us? I said, well, I don't want to do that. I want my son to stay in school. It's not the best of circumstances, but we'll go forward. I didn't agree with the whole thing to begin with, but I said, this is where we're at, and I'm trusting you guys to lead me to the right place. And that's what she told me. She said, well, if you do the hearing, you'll probably get expelled. And she knew we didn't want to get expelled because we were both crying about it before we even entered the room.
Okay,
So she knew exactly where to poke.
thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Does anyone
Thank
on the
you,
board
sir.
know, do you get an opportunity, are you presented with that option again when something happens at the ALC and you're now going to go through the expulsion process?
So I
Is that-
think probably given the delicacy of this particular issue, if we could have them meet with staff outside, and then if you all would like to take a brief recess to individually speak with staff about any questions that you have prior to actually voting on the item, we could probably accommodate that as long as it's not, I mean, I don't want to drag the meeting on for all
Right.
night long, but I certainly want to make sure that
I
our
do have-
questions
I
are
have that question and
answered.
a couple other for them. So if
Okay.
Dr. Sullivan or Ms. Moore, if you can hear me, if you know the answers to those questions, maybe we can meet out.
Ms.
outside.
Moore is on her way to meet with the parents in the corridor. We would just ask that you respect social distancing when speaking with Ms. Moore.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us, and Major Lanza will escort you back out so you can speak with Ms. Moore, okay? Thank you for being here this evening. We appreciate you taking the time. Hopefully, we weren't scary. Okay. That concludes our public comment section of the meeting, and I believe, Dr. Mullins, that brings us to the administrative staff recommendations.
There are 3 persons on this evening's agenda for the board to consider.
What are the wishes of the board?
Second.
Moved by Mr. Susan, seconded by Ms. Duskovich. Is there any discussion? All right, please vote.
Is it not coming up?
It's not showing on my screen. Did you have 5 votes on that, Ms.
Yeah.
Escobar? You all had?
It's
Oh,
showing.
you guys can see it now. Look at that.
Well,
Okay.
It's behind.
And the motion passes 5-0. All right. Dr. Mullins, we are ready for the presentation about the continuity of services update for COVID-19.
If I may, Madam Chair, just to take a moment to introduce what you're going to see in a moment. We began our efforts to prepare for the closure of schools a little over a week ago. That came late on a Friday afternoon, and senior cabinet, we got the notification at between 4 and 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, and our senior cabinet refused to leave until we got a handle on that. I think we left the building shortly before 9 o'clock that night. Just the dedication and the commitment to that. But it doesn't end there. We recognized a lot of senior cabinet members, but the trickle-down effect, and then ultimately, I have to give huge kudos and shout-out to our school leaders as well, our principals and assistant principals, because even they, while on spring break, and in some cases, even their schools were closed because all of the school staff had taken personal leave, came together to start getting informed and understand what we were going to be facing as a community, as a school district in the coming days. I don't know if a day has gone by that, I did say, I think the last 24 hours has been the least information changing that we've had in the course of the last week. But, and not due to anyone's fault, it's just the circumstances of what we're dealing with. The word unprecedented couldn't be overstated. But our school-based leaders have done an amazing job of preparing their staff, communicating with their teachers, beginning to set up plans and accommodations and adjustments to what need to be done. Tomorrow, we're going to be launching training for teachers. We begin device checkouts. We begin supporting staff out in the field, if you will, and then making contact with their hundreds and thousands, in some cases, of their students across their school community. Fielding questions, being flexible. It's, I can't begin to capture the hours of effort and the poise, professionalism, commitment to flexibility. We've used the word grace and flexibility no short of 100 times in the last few days, and our school-based leaders, our principals, administrators, our district leaders have just been exemplars of those two words. And I will, it's interesting that we're really on Monday, March 30th, starting the third first day of school. One was August 10th. The other was September something, post Hurricane Dorian. And then March 30th will be the third first day of school for this school year as a result of a pandemic. So just our leaders carrying the charge and providing great stability and support to our community and our families and our kids is nothing short than miraculous. And couldn't be, again, more proud to lead this organization with the demonstration of leadership behind me and alongside me that has been demonstrated. So with that, you're going to see kind of a collage of information from several of our district divisions of the work that has been done, but I think it's a nice collection. It's not fancy, but it's functional and it's practical given all of the other things they're doing, but we wanted to give the board a glimpse of the work that's been done over the last several days, as well as it's a good reference for our community as they begin to understand what an organization that consists of over 9,000 employees, over 70,000 clients, over a stretch of 80 miles in 83 different sites of learning. Well, probably closer to 90 sites of learning when we take in our special centers and so on. So with that, I'll turn it over to the presentation.
Good evening, board members, community members. In this presentation, cabinet members will provide an update on how each division is ensuring continuity of services through restrictions in response to COVID-19.
Good evening. Educational Technologies COVID-19 update to the board will cover how we're handling the challenges of online education and communication, loaning of devices to students and staff, procuring hotspots, and dealing with the possibilities of a remote workforce. Online education and communication. Our teacher technology integrators have been creating new instructions and providing training for instructional and non-instructional staff members. They've also created materials to support online learning for our students and parents. Finally, this team has been supporting and configuring our Focus Gradebook and the Launchpad to support Brevard's online educational and additional communication needs. Device availability. Computing devices. Our network team has been updating system protocols and configurations, installing necessary software, and working to create device loan documentation. Our staff is working with school leadership on distribution plans. Internet hotspots. We're working to procure devices from service providers, although they're experiencing low inventories, to understand the needs of both our students and staff, and we continue to partner with our community for support on purchasing these devices. remote workforce. In the event that some staff can no longer report to their various offices, Educational Technology is working to enhance Brevard's software and hardware systems to support the technological challenge that a remote workforce will present to our network. This situation has presented challenges, including new protocols, configurations, in addition to a large number of devices possibly leaving our campuses. I would like to thank the ET staff and many partnering departments for all their work that they've done. Thank you.
Next 4 slides will review the functions of student services, including exceptional student program support and administration, English language learner program support, mental health supports, and what is happening at our alternative site programs. Students with IEPs are included in the standards-aligned instructional continuity plan to the same extent as all other students. Web links are included, providing digital supports for accessing instructional materials on grade level for both students with disabilities and English language learners. Instructional Skype, Zoom, and or Google Chat will be used to connect with students and monitor progress. Paper packets will be provided as needed. Individualized assignments as appropriate will be posted in Google Classroom, Focus, or sent via email. Students on access points and blast sites can materials through the unique portal or PDF. Additional instructional materials may include TouchMap and PCI. Parent resources will be available on the ESE webpage. For the related services of speech and language, deaf and hard of hearing, visual impaired, or occupational and physical therapy, virtual specialized instruction will be provided to the greatest extent possible. In order to maintain compliance with special education and related services, exceptional student education support specialists, school-based teachers and staff to ensure compliance with IEP services. This plan may include specialized instruction and related services to the extent it can be practiced remotely. All areas of a student's IEP or Section 504 accommodation plan will be considered. In Section 504, teams will monitor each student's progress and determine what, if any, remediation may be needed upon return to the student's placement. Any and all required evaluations or meetings may also be held remotely and virtually to the extent practical. If there is any type of delay, the nature and extent of the delay, and a plan to move as quickly as possible to prevent further delay shall be documented. ESE support specialists will begin assisting schools to schedule virtual meetings the week. Outside agency providers will continue to provide telehealth services to their current caseload of students. School counselors, social workers, and psychologists will check in with current student caseloads via BPS virtual platforms and will initiate new referral to parents or teachers. School counselors, social workers, and school psychologists will work to connect families and students to resources, collaborate with instructional plans on IEP 504 and problem-solving meetings, and will follow up with parents and families to support virtual school attendance. Behavior analysts and techs will collaborate and consult with school staff and families in problem-solving virtual meetings. They will also provide resources to school staff and families that support student behavior as academic expectations comes to our living rooms. Our Students in Transition team will provide supports and services to ensure students in transition have access to technology for instruction or packets, and that their personal needs are also being met, such as food and clothing. Our alternative sites include the Department of Juvenile Justice, the Brevard Group Treatment Home, our 2 special day schools, Fieldston and Riverdale, as well as our 2 alternative learning sites. At our DJJ site, our teachers developed work packets by grade level and course for 30 days. Students will continue to attend class with DJJ staff monitoring them and helping. Teachers will be available for staff to call them for academic help as needed. Students will receive weekly phone calls to check in on their emotional and academic status. At the Brevard Group Treatment Home, students will attend school during the normal time with Aspire staff providing the supervision and guidance. Our teachers developed packets by grade level and course for 30 days. Our teachers met with Aspire staff, explained student work, provided sample work problems, and answer keys. We'll call each student twice weekly to check on their emotional and academic status. At our 2 special day schools, Riverdale and Fieldston, the parents were called by faculty members to explain the procedures and alleviate misconceptions. Each student was sent home with current passwords to the academic platforms they are currently using. Students that do not have internet or a computer were sent home with work packets to complete. Those students will be called by a teacher daily. All other students will be called twice a week from their teachers. There will be a faculty member at both during normal work hours. At our 2 alternative learning centers, students will complete coursework via OdysseyWare, which is the current platform they are using. Students without computer access were allowed to sign out a computer. Students without internet access were given work packets. Teachers will be online to help students with OdysseyWare during their normal work hours. Students that are not completing assignments or having difficulties will be called by a social worker or school counselor to assess this situation.
Good evening. The Division of Equity, Innovation, and Choice has a variety of responsibilities. Our Access Grant project team will continue to update their website to support Florida teachers with appropriate lessons and accommodation. BARD After School team will develop lessons and activities for families, which will be posted to their website. Adult Education currently has an online educational platform to continue to support their students. EIC communicates daily with all charter schools to offer support and update them with district plans. Our charter schools are responsible for developing their own educational continuity plan, as they often use different curriculum materials.
The Facilities Department is continuing to monitor cleaning protocols from the Department of Health and the Department of Education. Our Environmental Health and Safety team is regularly reaching out to schools and providing assistance when requested. We are already executing and planning for maintenance and minor improvement projects in schools while students are not in the buildings. These efforts are being coordinated with school administrators. The team is continuing to plan for summer construction projects and potentially starting earlier if that opportunity is available. Concurrently, we are communicating with our vendors in the event material or worker shortages to execute projects. Finally, we are working with the finance team to estimate utility cost savings that will result from reduced usage of our facilities.
Food and Nutrition Services. We are pleased to announce that the following schools opened as food distribution centers on Monday, March 23rd, and will continue on weekdays from 10:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. Those schools are Atlantis, Cambridge, Cape View, Central Middle, Gulfview, Jupiter, Mila, Mims, Sherwood, Sunrise, Turner, and University Park. Additional sites are being planned for subsequent weeks. Our procurement and distribution schools and departments with canceled travel, field trips, and events. They're expediting procurement items related to COVID-19 outbreak, postponing non-essential selection committee and vendor meetings, and modifying distribution services to assist schools and district offices with emergency needs.
Good evening, Ms. Belford, Dr. Mullins, and board members. I'd like to provide a brief update regarding Human Resources Services and the ongoing processes to ensure we not only move smoothly through this circumstance, but are also ready to finish the school year and begin a new one in August. Our annual career fair, originally scheduled for yesterday in a face-to-face format, was converted last week to a virtual format with over 150 candidates interviewing and our principals issuing 47 binders to teachers. Thank you to Mr. Mike Alma, his team, and to our principals for thinking outside the box and for being so flexible and open to new ideas. Ongoing professional development to include reading endorsement classes and ESOL classes have shifted to a completely virtual format through Blackboard Learn and Skype. We are constantly reevaluating the upcoming courses and assisting teachers where needed to ensure they can complete what they have started. This morning, we met with develop a memorandum of understanding regarding online and remote instruction. I know our teachers are embarking upon a new process in teaching and instruction, and I appreciate the positive attitudes and the support of the BFT and of all the teachers and staff. In addition, we met with Local 1010 Mr. Schifrin with BASA as well. We will continue to work with our unions to ensure we are meeting the needs of all employees. We have been providing staff updates to the extent possible in this ever-changing landscape we are currently navigating, with the most recent one being last Friday afternoon. Cabinet members have been working through plans for staff whose job responsibilities might be appropriate for remote work, and to that end, I sent to the leadership team last night the alternate worksite procedures with hyperlinks. Finally, while planning for the immediate circumstance at hand is a priority, we are also running a parallel process to ensure all daily operations of HR and the district continue to run smoothly, to include typical spring processes of supplements, reappointments, issuing, just to name a few. As we modify these routine tasks to our new way of work, we will be communicating directly with the leadership team to keep them informed and apprised of any changes. Thank you so much.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to share the elementary instructional continuity plan. We are developing a website for our parents, teachers, and students to be accessible through. We will be asking students to log into Focus each and every day for attendance and information on their daily lessons. Teachers will be pushing out lessons via Focus. Remember, you can get to the Focus app, the Launch pad. We will also have a link on the main page of the BPS website into the elementary instructional continuity plan. Once a teacher or student logs into the elementary school learning platform, they will see a link to the grade level in which their lessons will be stored. There will also be links to the library, to PE, to our teachers will have 3 different instructional options in which to deliver instruction. They may use the district-created lessons by our resource teachers and content experts. They may also use the same district-created lessons with teacher choice enhancement. If a teacher chooses to develop a teaching tool for her students, she may do that and push it out through the website as well. Our other third choice is a teacher autonomy to create their own lessons based on instruction. We know that our teachers know their students best, and we know that our teachers know what kind of lessons our students need. So we're giving our teachers these 3 options in which they can deliver lessons. Also, we have developed a sample classroom teacher's agenda that they would be available via Skype or phone or email to connect with parents or students who may have questions about their instruction. We also have a sample guide for students. Our English language arts in elementary and in math will be delivered through the iReady platform. This will be expected to spend 45 minutes with the online instructional program a day for reading and 45 minutes for math. We also expect our students to complete 2 activities a week, music, art, or media, and that's a minimum. Students will also be expected to do science through STEM scopes and social studies in Studies Weekly. And we do hope our students are reading the books of your choice. As we know that we will need to be in touch with our students, we are asking our teachers a student log where a teacher will go in and record where students are instructionally and then follow up with the parents and the students on anything that they need help with. We want to make certain that our students are logged in through either iReady or Focus every day, so we know they're engaged in the work. We've also created on our website a parent help guide because we know this is a new world for all of us. So parents, teachers, and students should all be working closely through the elementary instructional continuity plan. Make adjustments and modifications as we go through this process to make it more efficient and easy to use. Thank you so much.
Secondary Leading and Learning has been focusing on leveraging our existing resources and learning. Many of our students and teachers work seamlessly in a variety of digital platforms and will continue to utilize the tools that are familiar to them. The Student Launchpad is the center of all operations. Students are very accustomed to accessing their Launchpad and working through many of the available resources. For example, you will see we have full online textbooks for many of our courses, in addition to supplemental resources. Students frequently access those books in lieu of taking home heavy textbooks. BPS Overdrive, now Libby, is an online tool that allows students to check out free library books in an ebook format. BPS has a significant number of online books, and students can also access books from a public library. Each student's Launchpad is a little different depending on their courses. I encourage all parents to take a look at their student's Launchpad. In the days prior to spring break, we asked all secondary students to log into their Focus account and Launchpad just to make sure their passwords were current. Within Launchpad, one of the most used features is Google Docs. Many of our students already submit the majority of their work in this format. They peer edit, share documents, and work on presentations. Most of our teachers also have a Google Classroom already set up. They can post lessons, reading assignments, problem sets, and other engaging activities. For the teachers who may have not previously utilized a lot of online resources, and content specialists created a guide for every one of our courses, well over 400 of them. That includes all of our elective and CTE offerings in addition to all core classes. We have communicated with our teachers and given them contact information for help with either content, digital tools, or support in student services. I've been engaged in robust communication with principals, and our team adjusts resources as needed. We are prepared for teachers in this new way of working.
So again, I hope that gives you a glimpse of the work that's been going on behind the scenes. A lot of that will be going live tomorrow with additional supports for teachers. Our principals, again, have been amazing in adapting all of these resources and supports to their staff. They have created creative meeting environments. Some folks chose to meet in person in groups of 10 or less, while also accommodating virtual participants in those same conversations. And they have just, they've found a way to do it. And they've taken advantage of the resources in their building, both teacher leaders as well as staff members. I would say for our public, couple things. One, your child's school remains your number one point of contact for the supports, the questions, the resources, whatever you need for your child's education. Their school remains their one-stop shop for all things their child needs, from guidance to mental health to social work support, all of those types of things at their schools. And our schools have plans and backup plans in place to support our students and our families. And the other thing I would ask of our parents, our students, we will be launching the first day of school on March 30th. Just like the first day of school, and just like the second first day of school this school year, there are bumps in the road. There are things to work out. There are some challenges to overcome. And there will be inevitably on Monday, March 30th, when we ask 70,000 children to return to school, return to learning, assigned to 5,000 different teachers at 83 schools across our district. in an environment that never brings them onto campus. There's going to be bumps, there's going to be some challenges, but we will work through them valiantly like we have the last two first days of school for 2019 and 20. So we just ask for patience and grace and flexibility from our students and our parents along the way, just as we've asked that of our staff as well. So thank you for the opportunity to share the work that's been going on.
Thank you, Dr. Mullins, and thank you to our entire team for all of that great information for our families. Ms. Deskovich?
I have a question. iReady, the last I knew, over half of our elementary schools didn't have the full instructional version. Is this going to be accessible for all
Actually,
of our?
Curriculum Associates stepped up, and they're providing it to all of our teachers for this period of time.
Wow.
That is huge. I don't know how we can say thank you properly, but super impressive, and thank you to Curriculum Associates.
Curriculum and Associates, iReady, yes.
Wow, that's unbelievable, because that is a multi-million-dollar price tag, if I'm correct. Yes.
I couldn't begin to
I feel
estimate
like
what
it's
the cost is,
$500,000 for
but
the school. I feel like there was like $1.5 million. If I go back to the budget when we wanted to purchase it, it's well over $1 million.
yeah, I believe you're right.
Thank you.
Okay, board members, at this point, we are approaching our consent agenda, and, we should have known that tonight was going to be a little bit squirrely, and it's not because of our technology or our social distancing, as it turns out. Per the recommendation of Mr. Gibbs, instead of recessing to allow discussion with individual team members, his recommendation was that we consider pulling the item, because we don't really want to have discussion with our staff on camera about details about the situation, right? Because it's about a student. So Mr. Gibbs's recommendation was to pull the item from the consent agenda, move it to the end of our meeting, and we can stop filming and have discussion on that. So that was my plan, was to ask you all for a motion before we went into the consent agenda. But then I just got an email from Dr. Sullivan, who says that Ms. Moore and she spoke to the parents, and they are all good on next steps. So Ms. Moore has joined us in the back of the room, I think in the event. Oh, and it looks like maybe Dr. Sullivan as well.
6 feet apart.
Okay, we're still at 10.
Yeah, we're still at 10. So, board members, I will ask for your comfort level with moving forward based on the information that Dr. Sullivan and Ms. Moore have already assisted this family, and things appear to be resolved. If you are comfortable doing so, then I would move us to voting on the consent agenda. If you are not comfortable doing so, then do we want to pull it and move it to the end of the agenda? What are the wishes of the board on that
Move to
issue?
approve the consent.
Mr. Susan has moved to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there a second for discussion?
I'll second for discussion.
All right, Ms. Campbell has seconded for discussion. That would open us up for discussion on the consent agenda.
If nobody else has concerns, then I can pull it and we can vote on it, and I'll just vote no, because I still have some more questions, and if I'm the only no vote, then it doesn't hold us up. If other people have concerns, then I say let's move it to the end and do, you guys following me? I know I'm talking in fragments. I think I'm tired.
I'm also fine with moving it to the end. We'll have the same ladies at our disposal for discussion. My question is, would we be moving the entire agenda item, which includes all the student expulsions, or just removing that one from item?
Ms. Escobar has indicated that she is capable, if a board member were to request to pull item F10, attachment 2020-62S from the consent agenda, that she could accommodate that need.
I would also like to see if we could, I don't have a problem moving it to the end and discussing it. I think it's a good idea.
I don't have a I don't want to make this a
No, I
huge
have
deal.
some
I don't have a
questions.
ton of questions. I just need a few more tiny confirmations before I'm comfortable. So if you
Yeah,
guys
me
are
too.
all okay moving
okay.
it, then
Okay.
do I make a motion to amend? Is that the?
So I'll move that we remove from item F.
May I make a
10.
suggestion that we
yes.
pull that item first and vote on the rest of the consent
She's amending it
items?
the right way.
Is that okay?
Yes.
And then
She's doing
we'll
it the right
Can we
work
just,
on that one?
can we
Yes,
just
so
remove the
Ms.
item?
Campbell is offering an amended motion
Right.
to,
To just pull from item F10, the expulsion 2020-62S.
Second.
does that work for you, Ms. Escobar?
That's the proper way to do it.
That way we can leave the rest in place
Yes.
on F10.
Just so you know, I seconded her motion.
Yes, Mr. Susan seconded the motion to pull that item from the consent agenda. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right, then are you ready for me to call for? You're a trooper, Pam. We love you.
I don't think we've ever done that before.
And just
Squirrely.
clarification while she's typing, it will be unrecorded as well. So when you're finished with the meeting, you will recess so they can clear us, and then you will discuss the specifics of the student discipline off air, unrecorded, because it is about student discipline.
Okay.
And then how do we vote on the final vote?
Okay. Ms. Escobar can continue to take minutes, so she has to record the minutes. It's just not recorded because you're going to discuss student discipline, which is exempt from the sunshine. It'll be off air and unrecorded.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbs.
Mr. Gibbs, may I read you what I have written?
Sure.
Approve the March 24th, 2020 school board meeting consent agenda with the exception of pulling 2020-62S from item F10, and the item will be discussed and unrecorded off air.
Yes.
Okay.
She's good.
Okay, so Ms. Campbell made that motion, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Susan, yes. Mr. Susan seconded it. So now we vote on the amendment, and then we come back and vote the whole thing.
I think we can vote on the whole consent agenda with this, correct?
Yes.
You have to vote to approve the amendment, then you vote to approve the act.
It's as amended, it's without that one item, so you just then move to approve the consent as amended.
We didn't vote on the amendment.
Right, so
You have to vote on the
The
amendment.
motion pending is without
Amendment.
2020, so she removed it, so the
Okay.
consent item is F10 as amended.
But the motion was to amend, so we have to approve the motion to amend, which the second did, and then we vote, and then we go back and vote on the whole
Yes.
thing. Yeah. So we're voting now on the amendment.
So Pam, are you good with that? Do we need a voice vote on the amendment?
Let me ask you one more thing. I'm sorry. I just want to make sure I don't mess this up. So if we are removing 2020-62S, do I have to do that now before they vote and move it to someplace else? Or,
I don't know how the system's set up, so I mean, if you just want to do it by voice and then go in and fix it later, you can do that.
let's do that. That way we're not messing somebody
So
up.
it's a separate attachment within.
So would you like
item.
for me to call for a voice vote on the amendment?
Yes.
All right, at this point, I will take a voice vote on the amendment. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so the amendment passes 5-0, Pam.
Okay.
At this point, I will ask for the board to provide direction on approval of the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Susan, seconded, who seconded?
I do.
Seconded by Ms. McDougal. Is there any discussion? All right, please vote. Dr. Mullins, I totally skipped your little blurb about the consent agenda. I'm sorry.
And can we do a voice vote on that one too? now?
Sure.
All right, I will take a voice vote on the motion to approve the consent agenda minus item F10. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0. We good down there, Ms. Escobar?
We will be.
Do you want me to hold off on moving forward? Because we're moving on to action.
No, that's fine.
Okay. Now we are moving on to the action agenda. Dr. Mullins.
Ms. Belford and members of the board, there are 4 items under this category. First is item G30 on the entry of final order in regards to the E-rate bid, which you will be voting on later under the procurement solicitations agenda item.
I understand the parties have submitted written statements in lieu of attendance due to social distancing. Before I ask Mr. Gibbs to explain the process, I want to thank Charter Communications Operating LLC and our school board attorney for considering social distancing and cooperating with the board for tonight's meeting. Mr. Gibbs?
Thank you. I do have a written statement from Mr. Kenneth Curtin with Adams and Reese LLP on behalf of Charter Communications Operating LLC, who filed the bid protest. And this statement is, we represent Charter Communications Operating LLC in this bid protest proceeding, and we are writing concerning the upcoming meeting on March 24th, 2020, wherein we understand the board will consider the recommended order entered March 12th, 2020, and the written exceptions thereto. We submitted on March 19th, 2020. We understand that because of the ongoing COVID-19 crisis, personal appearances at the meeting are being limited, and the chair has invited the submissions of written statements. While we would certainly prefer to attend the meeting in person, given this invitation, the current state of emergency, and acting consistent with state and federal directives to limit travel and personal contact, we are submitting this statement in lieu of our personal appearance. In short, we believe that Charter has raised significant issues, errors, and irregularities that render the intended award improper and illegal, and indeed illegal. These issues, as well as a number of cited errors in the administrative law judge's recommended order being considered at this meeting, are addressed in detail in Charter's formal protest and exceptions. We strongly encourage each board member to thoroughly review the materials Charter has submitted, fully consider the issues raised therein, and contemplate the potential consequences of proceeding with the award. We apologize for not being able to attend in person, but thank you for the board's attention and due consideration, especially given the ongoing crisis. Please do not hesitate to contact us if you have any questions or would like to discuss this matter in more detail.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbs. Did you also want to give any explanation as to process on this, or would you just like to let the recommendation stand?
Right. As I don't know how many of these you guys have done, but as a protest with exceptions filed, the board has to, by statute, vote on each exception individually, and then you'll vote on how you want to handle the overall process. So the way I recommend setting it up is go through the exceptions one by one. You'll vote on each one, and then you'll discuss, and you can have discussion under each exception, and then you'll discuss the issue overall, and you can either approve the recommended order by the ALJ or modify it, or you can just accept the exceptions filed, and then you would have to go against the recommended order and file your own order. Are there any questions?
So just to clarify, I'm going to ask the board members to vote on exception 1 and then exception 2.
And then you'll have a discussion on how the board wants to handle it. If you grant the exceptions, you'll have to decide whether you want to grant on one of the grounds and what you want to do with the bid at that point. If you deny the exceptions, you can still deviate from the recommended order if you wish to, or you can approve the recommended order in whole.
If we approve the exceptions,
Then you're saying that the recommended order was invalid for a reason, for the reasons stated. If you deny the exceptions, then you are saying the recommended order was not invalid. You can still discuss it and go a different direction from the recommended order based on all of the arguments raised. You do not have to approve the recommended order. It's just you're saying the issues raised by the exceptions are invalid, or you do not believe they're valid.
did all board members understand that process? So when you look at it on your screen, we have multiple actions.
We have multiple documents, but I don't.
Well, yeah, there are a lot of documents there, but there are multiple actions. The first two I presented as approve exception 1, approve exception 2, and then approve the proposed final order adopting the ALJ recommendation.
I'm not seeing that the way you just listed it.
Are you seeing it that way? Yeah, Mr. Susan has it the same. On the right side of your screen, it says current agenda item,
Oh, yeah.
entry of final order, and then there's a window under that that has the
Yes.
actions.
Got it. I think we both were we were in the.
We were on the item.
Got it.
Thank you, we see it now.
You guys got it now?
Yeah.
So what I am going to do is I am going to request the wishes of the board on exception 1, clarifying that approving the exception is disagreeing with the ALJ.
So if you approve this, then you're going
No.
against, right.
I think that's what Mr. Gibbs just indicated. Approving is rejecting the ALJ order and approving the exception.
Right, the exceptions are, they're arguing the ALJ got it wrong for the reasons stated in their pleading.
Which I saw. Okay.
So that's what the motion is, to approve the exception. So if you do not want to approve it, you would vote no. And you would deny the exception.
Do we need to move to deny?
So the
You
motion-
have to, well, you would have to, you can move to discuss and second it so that you open it up for discussion. The board can discuss the exception and the reasons for its, the reasons that it believes for or against, and then you would vote to approve or deny at that point.
Move to discuss, Madam Chair.
Second.
Moved for discussion by Ms. Campbell, seconded by Ms. Deskovich. I will open for discussion on exception 1. Ms. Campbell, your motion, would you like to discuss?
Sure. I would suggest that we as a board would deny exception 1, based on the fact that, the lack of standing means that they don't have the opportunity to protest this because they never put a bid in. So it's, that's pretty simple and straightforward. You either submit a bid or you don't submit a bid. So that's where I am on that.
Any additional board discussion? All right, then I would request a motion to approve or a motion to deny so we can move forward on this action item.
Well, it would be a vote, so if
Just
you
a
do
vote.
not wish to, the motion is motion to approve.
Okay.
So you would just vote, and if you do not want to approve it, you say no, and it will not pass. So
Okay.
the exception will be denied.
I have a question. Why, in 3 years on the board, I've never seen us have a recommendation of a motion to approve, and then we have to, why wouldn't this have been presented reverse? Why do I feel like we're being tricked?
You either have, you don't want to say you're denying it. They're asking you to
Yes.
approve their exception. That's
So-
what the party is asking you to do. They
Right.
filed the pleading. So that's
So
how
it
it's
gets put on our
presented.
agenda from them, not from staff.
Right,
or
if
it's
they did
usually
not
in that
file, if they
perspective.
did not file exceptions, the only thing here would be a motion to approve the recommended order of the ALJ.
Got
And they're
it.
basing it on the Jacksonville case.
I'm sorry?
They're basing that exception on the Jacksonville case, that although they did not file the bid, that they have proof because of that case. That's what it is. So if we deny it, then we're saying no, you don't.
So I believe I have a motion
And a second.
and a second on that issue. So lacking further discussion, I will call the question. Can you guys see the vote up there? Because I can't see it.
5-0.
And the motion fails 0-5. At this point, that will move us to exception number 2. What are the wishes of the board?
Move for discussion.
I'll second it.
Moved for discussion for Ms. Campbell, seconded by Ms. McDougall. Ms. Campbell, your motion, your discussion.
Just the challenge was that, untimely challenge, and, I think we need to have a little discussion just because the public needs to understand what's going on.
Right.
When, Charter had a problem with the RFP, and, but they didn't say they had a problem with the RFP until the whole process was done. Someone who is a potential bidder has the opportunity, if my understanding is correct, to, if they see a problem with it, to put that challenge out. And it looks like through the process that our procurement department answered lots of questions throughout the process, even delayed the final due date. And through that process, my understanding in charter is said on their own, they never put that question out there. They never said there was a problem with the RFP. And so once that process has gone through, you didn't put in a bid, you didn't put in any kind of timely thing, then, your opportunity is lost. And so that's, my recommendation would be that we deny this exception as well.
All right, then I will accept a motion. Oh, I'm sorry, any additional board discussion? Then I will accept a motion.
Motion's already been put forward.
Oh, she moved to approve for discussion. Sorry, that move for discussion is throwing me for whatever reason. So I have a motion on the floor. Without further board discussion, I'll ask for a vote. And the motion
Was rejected.
5-0?
Yes.
All right, motion was rejected 5-0. Okay. This brings us to our third action on this agenda item, which is to approve the proposed final order adopting the administrative law judge's recommended order of dismissal and dismiss Charter Communications Operating LLC's protest for lack of standing and failure to timely file its challenge to specifications. What are the wishes of the board?
Move to approve.
Moved by Ms. Deskovich and seconded by Mr. Susan. Is there any additional board discussion?
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm voting the right way.
This is a normal vote.
I know, okay, that's what I was thinking. I said, okay, just want to make sure I understand it. Okay, thank you. Unbelievable.
Any additional board discussion?
Does someone want to explain that more to Cheryl than me saying it's a normal vote? I mean, Cheryl, do you have
I get
more?
it. I know.
This is to approve the ALJ's recommended
They should-
order.
So we're approving the ALJs.
It's now worded in the positive.
Right.
So we're voting in the way that it's worded instead of having to reverse it.
Okay,
We all good?
I'm good.
All right, then I will call the question.
Passed 5-0.
And the motion passed 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Escobar, for your patience, and Mr. Gibbs for getting us through that wonkiness. Dr. Mullins, I believe it is to you.
Next, we have item G31, which are procurement solicitations.
What are the wishes of the board?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Campbell, seconded by Mr. Susan. Any discussion? All right, please vote.
Somebody hasn't
It
voted.
wasn't me. It was me. It was in a different place.
Why can I no longer see our, bear with me for just 1 second, guys. I'm trying to figure out why I can no longer see your voting.
I could see mine.
On the bottom, do you see the thing that says votes?
Is it because
No,
it's
it
too far down?
changed- It changed my screen, and now I have actions and attachments for some reason. It's not going off of that.
That's why I was taking so long.
Yeah. All right, but the motion passed 5-0, Ms. Escobar?
Yes.
All right, Dr. Mullins.
Item G32 is department school-initiated agreements.
What are the wishes of the board?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Susan, seconded by Ms. Campbell. Any discussion? Moved by Mr. Susan, seconded by Ms. Campbell. Any discussion? Please vote.
5-0.
And the motion passes 5-0. Dr. Mullins.
Item G33 is temporary delegation of procurement authority in the event that school board meetings are canceled due to COVID-19.
What are the wishes of the board?
Move
Move
to
to
approve. Second.
Moved by Mr. Susan, seconded by Ms. Campbell. Is there any discussion? Ms. Deskovich?
Real concerns with the recent activity from the governor, initially the order to cancel all school meetings through June 30th. It makes a lot of us a lot more real to me. If we couldn't figure out ways to meet tonight, or if they want to come down a little more heavy-handed and making sure we can't leave, that hands a lot of authority. Not that I don't trust or look for something, but that eliminates oversight on, on contracts, on budgets. I'm very uncomfortable with this, and I'm the only one that has concerns.
Not at all.
It's my understanding this particular, sorry, Madam Chair, this particular item is just allowing him to do that specifically with procurement. Is that correct? On things that we might need moving forward in our situation we're in right now.
Well, and it's specific to board members being incapacitated,
Right.
basically. So if three of us are not, if three of us are, laying in a bed on ventilators and we cannot come up with a quorum even virtually, then it would give the superintendent the authority to keep things going in the district. And in addition, if he were to not be able to function, then it would delegate to his deputy.
I heard what you're thinking also, and when I went through it, and it specifically gives us that three of us have to be incapacitated, and there needs to be some kind of a process in place that in the event that the board can't be answered, that there is an opportunity for the superintendent to continue. I did have some extreme concern when I heard about it at first, but then once I realized that it only triggers if three of us are not able to make it due to incapacitation, just like Ms. Belford said, that's when I realized that this was something that I could approve.
I hear what they're saying, but I don't see anything written that says that. Oh, this is so much louder now. Thank you, sir. All it says in the write-up here is the delegation of authority will only be implemented if school board meetings are canceled and expires upon the next occurrence of a regular school board meeting. It doesn't say anything about, I don't say anything about what Ms. Belford is saying.
There is no attachment on here at the moment.
Part of it also is that if we're speaking that this is what we approve, that is the intent of what we're saying. So if we say we are passing this based upon what we think to be three of us being incapacitated, that also becomes part of the intent record.
I'm not comfortable. There's no attachment. It doesn't say those words. I will be voting no.
Dr. Mullins?
Yeah, if I'm, this agenda, I just want to clarify my position on the agenda item. I don't have a strong opinion that it is my hope and expectation that it becomes unnecessary to have such an arrangement. The item was put on the agenda before the more recent flexibility provided by the state to not have to have an in-person quorum for the board, board members can call in or attend the board meeting virtually, and their participation counts towards voting rights on the board. So even if a board member were to become ill and couldn't attend in person, they could attend virtually and still render their vote so we can maintain business. In the unlikely event that more than 3 members of the board became so incapacitated that they couldn't participate even remotely on a board meeting, that seems tremendously remote to me. But I am not, this is not I like the accountability. I like the democracy of the board voting on items. I don't have a strong position to insist that the board make this provision. So if the board isn't comfortable with the current recommendation, but interested in other provisions that would ease the comfort of the board, we could certainly work with Mr. Gibbs on language and bring it back to the board at the next board meeting.
Or we can just amend it to say exactly what you want it to say now.
You can table it and we can revise it. I will point out that it does say that the board does at the next meeting they'll bring everything that's done without board approval for ratification at the next meeting that does occur. If you're still not comfortable, you can table it until the the next board meeting, and we can work on the language with guidance from the board on what would make everybody comfortable.
Or we can amend it to say it is to include the 3 that is not in there, and that can be brought back to us.
Yeah, this is something I'm extremely passionate about. I think I saw quickly the board lose its entire authority in a matter of one order from the governor, and then reinstated again, and I'm very uncomfortable with this. We've been elected by the public. It's our form of government. I'm very proud of the way the state of Florida does business and running their education, and something like this changes that. It changes the people's oversight, input, and gets it all to one individual. Again, Dr. Mullins, this is not about you personally at all. It's more about our authority and us turning it over.
If I may, Madam Chair, I wanted to refer us all back to an email I sent everyone last week. I did a little research on the superintendent's emergency powers, and that might make us feel better about the situation with or without this particular action. So it's policy 0132, and I just pulled out a section of it because it includes lots of things on our executive power, but there is this section that says the superintendent shall be delegated the authority to take necessary action in circumstances not provided for in board policy, provided that such action shall be reported to the board at the next meeting following such action. And the next paragraph states, the superintendent, in cases of emergency, may suspend any part of these policies and/or procedures, provided that the superintendent shall report the fact and the reasons for such suspension at the next meeting of the board, and provided further that the suspension shall expire at the time of said report unless continued in effect by action of the board. So I'm assuming that really it's actually kind of a redundant policy. If, for example, the superintendent, a need were to arise in our certain circumstances that we're in right now, and we couldn't convene a board meeting quickly enough following our sunshine laws that are still in place, emergency meeting or whatever, this would give him the authority to go ahead and approve, let's say, a purchase over $50,000 or something like that if it was necessary, and it would still come back to us that we could. Does that make sense? So this policy actually, it kind of makes this particular recommendation redundant, it seems to me.
It seems like it's already taken care of in that policy.
Right.
Mr. Susan.
And thank you for that. I think where the difference between the two is that states that if we have another school board meeting that is coming up and he can make those decisions and move to that next school board meeting, the only issue with that is that if there's an issue where we can't have a quorum, we have emergency meetings, we have issues that are coming up, we need to be able to have a process in place if we can't have a quorum to be able to move the district. And that's when I heard that if there were 3 of us that were not able to call in, that weren't able to attend, that is an extreme situation that, as Dr. Mullins stated earlier, is such a low probability. But in the event that that happens, we no longer have a quorum for a meeting in a couple of weeks. We may need to have emergency meetings within a couple of days. Situations could drastically get worse. So the opportunity to fix that and to move forward with a policy that gives our district the opportunity to continue to move while that's going on, I think is why I supported it. And I think that if you look at that policy that or that statute that you were referring to, it refers to the next meeting. But if there's a situation where we can't get a quorum at this meeting or the one in reference, then you may not be able to get one at the next meeting. And there may be a whole lot going on in between there that I would be concerned about. I am also, Ms. Deskovich, huge on having the people be represented. I just know that there's some times in history where there needs to be an opportunity when we cannot perform ours, that the district has an opportunity to continue to perform theirs. That's all. I just want to say that.
Thank you, Mr. Susan. Any additional board discussion?
Just to reiterate that what we're voting on isn't what
Right.
Mr. Susan is. So I
would
feel
like
like
to
this
amend
needs
it.
to be, okay, well then I'll let you. But
Would you want to amend it this evening and then hash that out this evening, or?
I would like
or
to
table
set
it?
intent that we do not want to pass this policy unless it is that 3 of us are incapacitated. It does not reference inside there. So I would make a motion, I'll do it now, make a motion to amend this to include that if 3 board members are incapacitated, that this would kick in.
May I?
We have a motion on the floor, so we have to have a second before we can open for discussion.
I will second.
So we have a second on the motion that will open for discussion. Ms. Deskovich.
So that amendment is this plus that. You're not overriding this. You said to include. So you want to pass this, not a policy, it's a action? What would this be called? We're not creating policy here. This is anybody?
It's a signature authority.
Okay. That says that we will delegate authority only when school board meetings are canceled because, or also, like, there's a lot of, I'm very uncomfortable with us moving forward tonight with a lot of words. Usually we nitpick and fine tune exactly what we want things to say, especially when we're going to change our whole, the way money gets spent here. I think we owe it to ourselves to put a little more thought into this.
I would reference that Mr. Gibbs's recommendation was to table and refine, but I will leave it up to you all to go the direction you would like to go.
Mr. Gibbs, at what point can you ask for a table when there's a motion and an amendment on the floor?
You can deny the amendment, come back to the original, and then deny that and table it.
There was a second.
There was a second, yeah.
You would say no on the amendment, and then just table the original item to a date certain, so that you're sure it comes back on that date. If you just table it, and then someone has to untable it.
I can't make a motion to table right now because we have an open motion, right?
So
Right,
you
we
would
have to kill the vote.
deny the amendment, and then when it comes back around to the other one, you would table the original motion.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
before we
Ms.
close the
Campbell.
discussion to vote on the amendment, or, up, down, or sideways, I just want to remind us that our next board meeting, unless we have an emergency meeting, is in 3 weeks. Whatever we choose to do, just be reminded that things are changing day by day. And we just need to be comfortable with that if we put it off for 3 weeks and something were to happen and, there's something that we need to get in a hurry, especially when regarding technology needs or whatever, we wouldn't have anything in place except for we have policy
Emergency
0132,
policy.
and we're certainly in a state of emergency at the time. The superintendent could act under that authority.
And may I state also that this is in reference to specifically to the coronavirus.
Right.
It does not give a supreme authority for here on from all the other issues that are coming through, so.
Any additional board discussion before I call the question?
Can I go for a clarification on that amendment to Ms. Deskovich and to include that when we amend it, it is to include that this does not kick in unless there are 3 incapacitated board members. So this would not kick in at all. So not and if, or, and everything else. That is, this will not kick in unless my amendment says 3 board members are incapacitated. And then this kicks in only for the coronavirus in the event that he needs to purchase things that we can't get together to give him the approval to do. So when we were saying that we might be concerned about people in the future, this is specific to this one, to Dr. Mullins, to the next month.
It is and it isn't, Mr. Susan, because what we're approving is not the discussion, we're approving the recommendation. And the recommendation simply reads, delegate the School Board of Brevard County, Florida's approval and signature authority under Board Policy 6320, procurement and contracting, to the superintendent or designee in the event school board meetings are canceled. So I think that's where the issue is that we're approving or denying the recommendation, not the discussion item, and there's a lack of clarity in the recommendation.
Right, where it references in response to. It gives that intent to, in response to, this is coming.
Only in the discussion, though.
Right, and if we
not on the.
approve, they're gonna come back with it cleaned up for us at the next meeting.
Yeah. Any additional discussion?
Again, why do we need any of this if this happens, he can invoke that policy at any time? Is that correct, Mr. Gibbs?
There is the emergency policy in place, it says you can suspend school.
I think it's important that we make sure Mr. Gibbs' microphone is working, just because I don't want there to be any question of what was stated.
Right.
Can we, it's not working.
It's not.
Miss,
Ms. Campbell, can you share your microphone with Mr. Gibbs?
I don't know, I've been breathing on it all night.
hold on, let's model our.
Thank you to our tech staff for keeping us all straight this evening.
They've
All right, are we
kept them
good?
hopping.
Yes, better.
All right, Mr. Gibbs.
Thank you, sir.
All right, the emergency does kick in there, and he can do it. I had it up a minute. It does provide for suspension of any part of the policies and procedures. I think the concern is if it only applies to the emergency, because it says in the event of an emergency, what qualifies under the emergency purchasing authority there is, I think, the concern from purchasing. Would it include like bids that have federal deadlines that aren't waived? Not necessarily related to the emergency, it's general business that needs to take place. I think that was what they were looking to encompass in there if the board's not able to meet. So if it's not directly related to the emergency, if he doesn't need to make a purchase only for the emergency, it's general business, would it be covered by that policy is the question they had. I don't really have an answer whether it would cover every single purchase the district wanted outside of an emergency. So if we had a deadline that was going to save the district $12 million, but it's not an emergency related item, can the superintendent invoke that policy to purchase that versus, if you grant him the authority to and then bring it back to the board when it can meet again for final approval, it wouldn't hold up those types of purchases.
I would think a state of emergency declared by our governor and by our president would put anything under, can be qualified under emergency. But not only that, it puts the superintendent in a position where he is very careful, where he is going to double, triple, quadruple check, because he's not only going to be questioned on the purchase and the signature, he's also now going to want to make sure that it falls in the emergency category. So I'm just holding my ground on this one.
So I will remind the board that we have motions on the floor to approve the amendment that Mr. Susan brought forward. Lacking further discussion on the amendment specifically, I will call the vote.
Do we do that voice vote? If you give me one moment. Yes, in the interest of time, let's.
All right, all in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
All opposed?
No, nay.
Nay.
No. So the motion fails 3-2. At this point, we're back on the original recommendation to delegate the School Board of Brevard County, Florida's approval and signature authority under Board Policy 6320. What are the wishes of the board?
Move to approve.
Open for discussion?
I have a question here. So, and this is my fault, do we have a policy in place that has chain of command? If something should happen to the superintendent, that is in our policy. This is unusual circumstances right now. This is not business as usual. And of course, we are his boss, so if he does something screwy, there are repercussions. But I want to make sure that we're not hanging out there in case something should happen. I do not foresee 3 of us being incapacitated. I would be very, very surprised if 3 of us was incapacitated. But I just want to make sure that we do, in case there's something that we need that needs to be purchased, and for whatever reason 3 of us are not around, and that we can move forward.
Mr. Gibbs, can I ask a quick question? This, as it stands, does not include the 3-member incapacitation, correct?
It just covers as written.
Yeah.
If the
Okay.
board
They're
cannot
canceled.
meet. So Now, the executive order waives physical quorum. It does not waive any other sunshine requirements. If the board can meet virtually, but we do not have a mechanism in place for public comment, you cannot hold that meeting. The governor did not waive any other requirement of the sunshine other than physical quorum. So you have to make sure you have a virtual quorum, so at least 3 board members are available, and you have a mechanism in place to allow public comment. I don't know how difficult that is to set up. I know other districts are discussing multiple different options, including allowing them to call in to a number and then they put them on the air with call-ins. That might suffice, so it might be an easy answer. I cannot answer that, how easy it would be to arrange for our district. But it would, right now, it would cover everything if the board can't meet. If the governor simply says, everybody's staying home. If the public isn't allowed to come to a board meeting and we don't have a mechanism for them to communicate from home, you cannot have a meeting.
Ms. McDougall's
Campbell?
question, though, was, is there the chain of command for Dr. Mullins, I think? Like, if you're man down, who then takes over your role? And I think that's the deputy.
Designee, according to policy.
He can designate anyone, correct? And it's usually the deputy.
Ms. Campbell, I think you were trying to speak.
Yes, I wanted to point back to the recommendation right now, which is school board meetings are canceled, and technically that was issued last week. All school board meetings are canceled to the end of the fiscal year. Am I remembering that order? I know there's been recommendations since then, and we can call emergency meetings. Tonight wasn't necessarily an emergency meeting, but there were definitely timely things that needed to be done because we have deadlines and due dates for different things that we were voting on tonight, and they took most of the the non-essential things off. But, the governor did say in the executive order, school board, or maybe it was a DOE recommendation, I can't remember. We've had a lot of things in the last week. School board meetings are canceled. So unless we have a really good reason to have one, and we probably will because we've got construction projects coming up, things that can't wait. We just need to consider that it's very likely, what Mr. Gibbs said a little while ago, that we get in a situation where we can't have a school board meeting. I just wouldn't put it past our uncertain future.
Ms.
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 Peskovich?
Belford, I am more comfortable with Ms. Belford being the designee because she is at least elected by the people and then elected by us to be chair. I'm more comfortable with giving her that authority on our behalf than I am on an appointed position. I don't know if we want to go down that right this minute, but that's my opinion.
Mr. Gibbs, is that a feasible request from Ms. Deskovich?
I'm not motioning to amend. Is that your third one you've burned through? You are a chatterbox tonight.
Keeping him hopping.
Sit a little closer.
I'm not asking for an amendment yet. I'm just,
Right,
I'm
you're
saying, is
saying-
that even in the realm of consideration?
You basically want to say we're going to grant the chair, temporary ability to approve these brought to the chair by staff or the superintendent. I think you could.
You can't hear him still? Me? Him? Okay.
I think it's working now, right?
Yes. He just got his third mic.
They just brought me a new one. So I think you can designate the chair if you wanted to, and then it would come to the next board meeting
For everyone to approve after
ratification.
that.
Right, the next available board meeting, if that's the route you wanted to go.
And if the chair's not, then the vice chair, and if the vice chair's not, then who?
I actually think, no insult to the chair, the vice chair, I actually feel less comfortable with that situation than as the recommendation stands right now. And honestly, if we're kind of all done, I'd call the question.
So I'm going to remind the board that what we are voting on right now is the recommendation to delegate our approval and signature authority to the superintendent. So in the event that you would like to request an amendment to this in any way, shape, or form, then we would need to vote down the approval, or we would need to have an motion to amend.
And I can remove my call to question if someone was interested in tabling it. I just,
That's what
Can I motion to table now, or do we have to wait till we vote?
Yeah, you can move to table it.
I move to table to a unnamed future date. Is that the correct way to?
You can do unnamed, or you can just, which would just be table. You just want to
Okay.
table it, or you can table it for a date certain.
Could she table it for no later than April 14th in the event that we need to have an emergency meeting before our next scheduled meeting?
That's fine.
I move to table it no later than April 14th. Is that the scheduled date for? Yeah. I move to table it no later than April 14th.
All right, so I have an amendment, or I have a motion on the table to table this particular item until no later than April 14th. Is there a second? Seeing no second, the motion fails. Which puts us back on the original motion to delegate the signature authority per the agenda. What are the wishes of the board?
You can vote on that one.
Oh, we already have the motion standing on that one. Okay, so then I will call the question on delegating the School Board of Brevard County, Florida's approval and signature authority under Board Policy 6320, and the event school board meetings are canceled.
And can I ask a point of clarification, who would cancel the school board? Can I ask who would cancel the school board meetings? It would be the superintendent or the governor? So the governor now cancels off hours, and this would allow you, in the event that the governor cancels off our school board meetings, you to do your procurement and everything else. That's what this is, correct?
That's my understanding.
Yep.
Mr. Gibbs?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, or if there is no quorum. So, I mean, if the event arose where we could not hold a meeting
Right.
because 3 of you were incapacitated in some form, it would cover that as well.
or if we couldn't have public comment.
Right,
so
if we
couldn't
couldn't,
vote.
yeah. If a meeting's canceled, if we cannot hold meetings for any reason, it would give that authority to move business forward until the next board meeting. It expires upon the next scheduled board meeting per the language.
So as it sits right now, if you voted yes, it would give him authority from now, if we don't have one virtually, through a minimum June 30th. And if we have a meeting in July, we would have to vote on everything that he approved in those months. A lot of damage can be done.
And I would also make the argument back that a lot of damage could be done to all of our procurement, all of our contracts, all of our construction, all of the things that we have, opening of schools and everything else. So it's a balance between the two, in that I understand that the fear is there, but at the same time, if the governor calls it, if we can't get the meeting, the district needs to continue to run. So.
If I may, because I'm starting to lose my mind a little bit here. I think there are very valid arguments on both sides of this issue, and my recommendation would be that someone put forward an amendment to modify the language here so that we could be comfortable with it. Because I understand we don't want to hastily put language together, but Mr. Susan is correct in that we could be in a real bind if we did not have the availability to have a meeting and something needed to happen. And Ms. Duskovich is very correct in my opinion as well, that there's an awful lot of leeway there, especially in today's political climate and executive orders coming down. Not that any of us have concerns about Dr. Mullins, but I think we do have concerns about that delegation of authority. We have taken an oath to serve the people of the state of Florida, right? And so I think there are legitimate concerns. Mr. Gibbs, is it appropriate for general counsel to make a recommendation on the verbiage of a motion based on your understanding of the wishes of the board?
I can try and put something together if you wish, but I think that's fine.
Can I ask a question? If we put in temporary, does that help at all?
It already says.
Does it say temporary? I didn't miss that, obviously.
Second line.
Approval signature.
Rod County,
Yeah,
Florida.
it says temporarily delegate its approval and signature authority.
Oh, I was reading the top part.
So,
Oop.
yeah. It's only implemented if school board meetings are canceled and expires upon the next occurrence of a regular school board meeting.
So if the superintendent, this is for you, Mr. Gibbs, if the superintendent signed a contract for $1 million, that was a year-long contract, during this period of time, we didn't meet for a few months, as it would be set up right now, we meet in July. What is our recourse? It's now been signed by someone we gave authority to, and the money's spent. What recourse do we have at that point if we have to sit down to approve that then in July?
It would have to be ratified under these terms, so if it goes there, we would have to add something to that contract if the board was unable to meet for any reason that says it will be approved by the board upon the next regularly scheduled. So they would go into it knowing it could be pulled back.
And that we would have to get a company to give us back $1 million in 3 months of service?
Usually you don't pay in advance, so it would be how far along are they, given the current environment that we are in performance. So normally you don't just write a check today for $1 million upon approval and then wait for them to perform the services.
Thank
In all likelihood, what this is more likely to be is something that's consumable, we would have already used it up.
And-
You know, if it's
yeah,
something that has
if,
to be
yeah,
purchased,
if we needed emergency supplies or something, emergency order of food to hand out to students, and he spent $1 million, then there's not much we can do.
I just would like to remind the board, if you all remember, before any of us were on the board, the $8 million vote that went down, that the board members weren't even clear on what they were voting for, that staff declared was an emergency because we were going to lose our software system. It devastated this district monetarily for quite some time into the years that I got on the board, and we had to settle with that company. I have that in the forefront of my mind as this is going on. Staff convinced that superintendent before my time, like I said, that it was urgent and it needed to be done. And that was a lot of money committed for a long time that we never saw anything for. So that's what's in my mind is people are panicking and making decisions, and this gives up our authority that we've been elected to do to have oversight, and I'm just not comfortable in any fashion at this point.
Mr. Gibbs, if I could ask for clarification, our recommendation here is what we're actually voting on, but you and Mr. Susan have referenced items in the discussion section. Do the items, for example, it says, shall seek ratification of any procurement items approved using this delegation of authority at the next regularly scheduled school board meeting. That is not actually in our written up recommendation. Do you feel that by voting, we are by default approving the elements of the discussion item, or are we simply approving the recommendation?
I would incorporate, if I would amend at the very minimum to incorporate items in the discussion item.
That makes sense.
If that's the way you want to go. I know there was also talk of recommending an amendment to incorporate the language here discussed tonight. I mean, you could amend to incorporate the discussion language and then add to it if you would like to, if you want it to be incapacitation, you could add in the event school only be implemented if school board meetings are canceled and or incapacity due to incapacity of school board members preventing a school board meeting. And then it would, continue on as written. You could go that route as well. But I think at a minimum, I would, if you're concerned with implementing that language in the discussion item, move to amend to incorporate the discussion item language into the motion.
Madam Chair.
Do you wordsmith it, Ms. Campbell?
No, I would just simply say, would simply recommend an amendment that we include in our vote, in the recommendation, the language from the discussion, right? So Pam can copy paste that later. And also to add to the language in the discussion that says this delegation of authority will only be implemented if school board meetings are canceled or there is, help me, Mr. Gibbs, because of incapacity of school board members, we are not able to hold one. That was, I think that's what he just said, but I don't think I said it as well.
If the governor cancels, if the school board members are incapacitated, and.
But I think it needs to be or, right? Because there's
Right.
school board canceled, that means
The
the governor
governor-
can cancel them, or it can be, we can't have one because we,
The governor cancels if the school board members are incapacitated, or if under current guidelines, people cannot have public speaking.
thank
Those are
you,
the 3
or
points.
under current guidelines, you know, the sunshine, the way the rules are, unless we cannot hold a meeting in the sunshine, that we can vote due to lack of public comment.
And we can also add, just for the purpose of this discussion, the time certain on this not to include after a certain date. This says June 30, but we can also say under the current situations of coronavirus.
Right, you could add it expires upon the state of emergency being lifted.
Right.
From
And
the
as soon as that
coronavirus.
lifts, the
So
state
that
of
gives it
emergency.
specific to this scope of what we're looking at.
All right, so can I amend my amendment?
Make a friend,
It's getting long.
have Mr. Susan make a friendly amendment.
Okay.
Can I make a friendly amendment to, I'd like to make a motion to friendly amend to only accept this if the governor makes it to where we can't meet, if the school board members are incapacitated, or if there is not public comment being allowed to be made, and specific to the current state of the emergency for the coronavirus.
Cover it all?
But do you want to include about the language in the discussion, right?
Discussion language.
And the discussion language.
That was already.
Yeah, that was already in
already on
hers.
the table.
He was just adding to hers.
Oh,
So
okay.
if she accepts it, she needs to accept it.
Can we tweak yours, just say, because, let's say.
Yes.
Things get all crazy, the way you specifically worded it was we couldn't have public comment. There may come a time where the governor even suspends that because we have to have business and it's not possible. I'm not
So
anticipating
peel
that,
off the
but,
public comment.
right, but that we
Okay.
can't have we have a meeting that we can't vote, where we can't vote because of sunshine law as it stands at the time.
Yep, there it is.
Did you get all that, Ms. Escobar?
It's on the recording.
Just gonna watch it back 12 times to get it.
Do you accept the friendly amendment?
I do.
So you need a second.
Second that one?
So we have the friendly amendment offered and accepted and seconded. So, Ms. Escobar, are you prepared for me to voice vote on the amendment as presented?
I would feel better if it were stated again. And
Mr.
I'm
Gibbs,
not-
can you please state?
What?
Can you please
Can you
state
summarize what we just said?
the intent of the amendment? More
Aren't you
eloquent.
glad that you're here with us tonight, Mr. Gibbs?
I can try. All
We're
right,
so happy you
the
are.
amendment, all right, the amendment is to incorporate the language from the discussion item, adding to it that it says, back up. In the event school board meetings are canceled by the governor due to incapacitation of board members or the inability to legally hold public hearings in the sunshine during the pendency of the state of emergency from the governor in Executive Order 20-52.
I'm getting a head shake from Ms. Escobar. Any additional discussion? I will call the question. Do you need a voice vote, Ms. Escobar? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
And the motion passes 4-1.
That is for the amendment, right?
That is for the amendment. Yes, for the amendment that Mr. Gibbs, he's gone through another microphone already. Amazing.
Good grief, Mr. Gibbs.
4 microphones for
What they
Mr.
say
Gibbs
about
this
attorneys is true. Good job.
week. Okay.
Now we're voting on the amended. Yes.
So we're back voting on the actual agenda item, Mr. Gibbs, or we're done with that?
Now, you approved the amendment, so we're good.
Oh, we don't have to go back to approve
No,
the
it
original?
was amended.
Okay.
So the item is approved as amended.
Thank heavens. Okay. Next, we have 2 information items. While we won't take action on these items this evening, they may come back to us at a later meeting for a vote. Does any board member wish to discuss either of these items?
Miss Belford, you're high flyer
Miss
tonight, I'm sorry.
Deskovich.
I'm not going to say much. I just, for those that are watching and maybe don't have the agenda in front of them, I just want us to be very public about the process with the half-cent sales tax. This is not approving that we are trying to put this on the ballot at this point. This is, which wouldn't come before us until April anyway, but this is the first sign, I think, that the district is looking in this direction, and this is, the information item is just it's getting us prepared to vote next month to send the ballot language for approval from OPAGA. So it's at very early stages, but I just want to make sure the public's aware that this is on there.
I appreciate that, Ms. Deskovich. And Dr. Mullins, I know you and I spoke a little bit earlier about this. Did you want to speak to this item? Is there anything that you would like to address?
Well, I'll just speak to and I would draw the public to the agenda item description, discussion. It clearly outlines what the process is that's required for the board to consider bringing forward to the voters of Brevard County the continuation or extension of the half-cent sales tax. And the requirement is that the resolution be presented to OPAGA at least 180 days prior to the referendum. So the 180-day period is approaching at the end of April. So that's why it's coming before the board for information at this meeting, and it is scheduled to come before the board for approval at the next meeting to then be submitted to OPAGA to meet that requirement. Then there would be another board action required to approve it to be presented to the Brevard County Commission for then to be taken to the Supervisor of Elections. So there are, to Ms. Deskovich's point, there are additional board actions required before this would go before voters in November.
Additional board comment, Ms. Campbell?
We'll have more discussion about the half-cent sales tax itself, but I think it would be later. But I think it would be good to explain to the public exactly what OPAGA is and what they do and why we have to do that.
Sure. OPAGA stands for, I gotta read it because I won't get it right, is the Office of Program Policy Analysis and Government Accountability. Mr. Gibbs, you chime in here, but essentially, if a referendum is coming before voters for extension, then if it is significantly different than what came before the voters originally, then it would potentially qualify for an audit by OPAGA, which would have to be completed and published to the public before the referendum.
Right, yeah, it requires an audit when it's first initiated, and then for renewals, if it is not significantly different from the version that was in place the December before the vote, then it does not require an audit. We want to make sure we're safe if the board decides to go forward, so we're trying to get it in line, and we want an opinion from OPAGA that it doesn't need an audit, so that there's no questions later on once the deadline is passed.
I would take this opportunity to remind the board a couple things. One, we engaged in some pretty robust discussion in January when Ms. Hand presented the current status of our facility needs assessment related to the projects that already been completed as a result of the current sales tax initiative, and also that the ICOC, the Independent Citizens Oversight Committee, provides an annual report to the board per their direction of their oversight of all of the expenditures related to the sales tax. And thirdly, We have the sales tax expenditures, projects, and procurement audited twice a year by an external auditor. That's done by RSM McGladrey, and that is presented not only to the board, but also to our audit committee after each audit. And we just completed the 9th audit for the current duration of the sales surtax and received 3 green checks, again, from RSM related to those areas that I mentioned with the sales surtax. So it is without any reservation that we are presenting this to OPAGA with any concerns about an audit. We certainly would, if they determine that that is required, we certainly welcome that process. But ultimately, we're on a timeline requirement of the 180 days. That's what's bringing us to the place at this meeting that it is coming before the board for information.
Any additional board discussion? Okay. Does any board member have anything further to report beyond the information items? Reminding you that we still have item F10 that we are going to come back to when we stop filming. Any board member have anything further to report?
Just one thing.
Ms. McDougall?
Just one thing. I don't think we mentioned it, and it's almost end of March, but it is National Social Work Month. And I want to thank all of our social workers in our schools who work very hard to remove barriers that prevent any of our students from getting an education. So thank you very much to our social workers.
Thank you, Ms. McDougall, for reminding us all of that. We appreciate it. All right, Dr. Mullins, do you have anything else you wish to add to discussion this evening?
I do, because inevitably when we recognize folks and we give thanks and kudos and so on, we inevitably and unintentionally leave folks out. And I don't know that we left them out, but I want to call them out explicitly. Going back to our opening conversation about the work that has been done to support the district, support our teachers, support our staff in preparation for our distance learning launch on Monday. Our resource teachers, our technology specialists, the curriculum that you saw in the presentation, the resources that are being provided online for our teachers across the district, that has been orchestrated, developed, put together by, I wish I could say it was an army. It's really a very modest number of resource teachers and content specialists. But again, they gave up their time in many cases over spring break and even this week. So all of that has had to, we take for granted what we put on our website just magically appears, right? That doesn't happen magically. It's through the support of ET and community relations and making sure that links go where they're supposed to, not just one time, but every time. And I was recently enlightened after a very extensive discussion around cabinet meeting. And Mr. Cheatham graciously and humbly met with me afterwards, and he said, "Sir, I just need to remind you that 90 minutes of discussion of about 5 different things involved 5 different departments except one. That was ET. Because everything that was discussed comes back to ET to be supported and orchestrated." And so I inevitably am going to miss some of the folks I should be recognizing again. But the layers and the extension of the work that's been done can't be overstated. And just so appreciative of the selfless dedication of our employees across our schools and across this building as well. And appreciate the indulgence of the board to recognize them.
Absolutely. Thank you for making sure that we're getting all those people included. We appreciate it immensely. Okay, Ms.
Can we just
Deskovich?
give a shout out to custodians? Like they are cleaning like mad people everywhere, every inch, sanitizing. So,
Absolutely.
I know we're forgetting
Yeah.
people, but
Yeah.
Thank you.
They're and Miss Escobar and all of the adjustments that she's made, and I really don't think that we can point to a single person in this district that has not just achieved Herculean progress in the past week or so. So we absolutely appreciate each and every one of you. Any additional discussion? All right, at this point, I'm going to call a recess in the meeting so that we can go offline to have discussion regarding student discipline on the item that was pulled from the consent agenda. So I will recess at this point so that our team can take us offline as far as recording.